At 19, I found a lump at my neck base. They said I just wanted attention. My mom burned the diagnosis. I collapsed inside a bookstore. At the hospital, the MRI left my parents pale. The world was spinning around me like a broken carousel. The shelves of books swayed as if someone was pushing them from the inside, and the bright light of the store grew dimmer and dimmer. I had time to think that I was stupid. I should have eaten something for breakfast before the floor came sharply closer to my face. "Girl, are you okay?" The woman's voice seemed so far away, as if it was coming from another room. I tried to open my eyes, but my eyelids were heavy as lead. Someone touched my shoulder, then I heard quick footsteps and a phone call. "We have a girl who fainted. This is it." The thing I had been so afraid of for the last month. My body finally gave up, stopped tolerating what I was trying to ignore. The tumor on my neck, which was getting bigger every day, finally made itself felt so that I could not pretend that it was not there. It all started a month ago, on February 22nd. I remember the date exactly because it was the day after my 19th birthday, and I still felt a little strange about officially becoming an adult. I was standing in front of the bathroom mirror, as I always did before going to bed, washing my teeth, and my hand automatically touched my neck. Her fingers came across something hard and incomprehensible at the base of her throat. It didn't hurt, but it was noticeable, like a small ball under the skin. I froze with the toothbrush in my mouth, trying to figure out what it was. I touched it again. Yes, there was definitely something. "Mom!" I shouted down the stairs. "Come here for a minute." Janice came upstairs with a disgruntled look on her face. Mom was always like this, tired after a 12-hour shift at St. Joseph's Hospital, irritated at any request I made that distracted her from her evening soaps. She had worked as a nurse in the cardiology department for 15 years and considered herself an expert on all medical matters. What now? She leaned on the bathroom door frame, crossing her arms over her chest. "There's something here." I touched her neck with my right hand. "Do you feel it?" My mom came closer, her fingers quickly tracing the spot where I was showing. She touched it several times, pressed a little. Her face remained indifferent, even a little bored. "It's a lymph node. It can be enlarged due to a cold or stress. You have a spring semester coming up, that's all." She was already turning to leave. "But it's pretty big, and I'm not sick." "Caitlin," my mom's voice became hard, the way she spoke to 5-year-olds who were afraid of injections. "I'm a nurse with 15 years of experience. Do you think I don't recognize an ordinary lymph node? Don't make up problems out of thin air." "But Mom..." "No buts. Go back to sleep and stop stressing yourself out. At your age, girls often become a little hypochondriacal." I stood in the middle of the bathroom, looking at my reflection in the mirror. Maybe my mom was right. Maybe I'm really exaggerating? That tumor didn't hurt, didn't interfere with swallowing or turning my head. But for some reason, it seemed to me that it was not just a lymph node. Something in my mom's eyes, the speed with which she dismissed my concerns, seemed suspicious. I tried to talk to my dad the next morning. Roger Murphy was sitting at the kitchen table, drinking coffee and reading sports news on his tablet. Dad had always been a quiet man, a mechanic who knew more about engines than people. "Dad," I sat down across from him, "what do you think about what Mom said yesterday?" "What?" he said without looking up from his tablet. "About the tumor on her neck." Now he looked at me, but there was something like embarrassment in his eyes. "Your mom knows better than that, Caitlin. But maybe you should go see a doctor. Listen to your mom. She's worried about you." Dad went back to his tablet, and I realized that the conversation was over. Roger Murphy never contradicted his wife, never interfered with her decisions. He lived by the principle, don't say too much, there will be no problems. In the weeks that followed, I tried to forget about it. Studying at Baker County College, working part-time at Mabel's Cafe 3 times a week, preparing for spring exams. All of this took up time and thoughts. But every morning when I was brushing my teeth, my fingers would naturally touch the area on my neck. and every time the tumor seemed a little bigger. I started looking at myself more closely in the mirror. I was looking for other symptoms, other changes. I seemed to get tired faster. It was harder to wake up in the morning, even though I slept the usual 7 to 8 hours. But maybe it was really the stress of the session. I tried again 2 weeks later. We were sitting in the kitchen. She was drinking coffee before her morning shift, and I was getting ready for class. Maybe we should go to Dr. Wilson's office? Just for peace of mind. Caitlin Murphy. Mom turned to me sharply, her green eyes cold. You've always been a smart girl. Don't start playing the sick princess now. I have enough real sick people at work to deal with without having to listen to stories at home. No buts. She slammed her cup on the table. You just want attention. Maybe it's because Dad and I haven't spent as much time with you since you went off to college. You're an adult, Caitlin, 19 years old. It's time to stop looking for ways to get attention through imaginary illnesses. The word stung like wasps. Imaginary illnesses. Attention. I looked at my mom and didn't recognize her. Where was the woman who kissed my bruised knees when I was 5? Your mother is right, Dad said quietly, not looking up from the newspaper. You shouldn't be so dramatic. I sat at the kitchen table feeling something inside me shrink, not from the tumor on my neck, but from the realization that it was easier for my parents to think I was making it up than to admit that there was a real problem. It is easier to dismiss it than to feel anxious, but the tumor did not disappear. It grew, and so did my anxiety. I started Googling symptoms, reading medical websites, scaring myself with the worst diagnoses. Then I reassured myself, my mom is a nurse, she should know. But then why do I have this feeling that she is wrong? I began to hide my fears. I stopped mentioning the tumor, pretended that everything was fine. But at night, I would lie there and feel my heart beating fast, and my mind would go through thoughts about what would happen if it was something serious. On March 15th, I broke down. My parents were at work. My mom was on the day shift, and my dad was at a car service. I seized the moment, called Dr. Wilson's clinic, and made an appointment. I told the receptionist, Brandy, that it was a college checkup. Of course, dear, Brandy said. We have an opening the day after tomorrow at 3. Will that work? It will. I hung up the phone and felt both relieved and scared. What would my parents say when they found out? But I couldn't wait any longer. Dr. Wilson was an elderly man who had been treating our family since I was a little girl. He always smelled like menthol lollipops and had kind brown eyes behind gold-rimmed glasses. I trusted him more than anyone. So, how are you, Caitlin? He smiled as he sat down at the table. It's been a while since we've seen you here. Dr. Wilson, I have something that's been bothering me. I told him about the tumor, about my parents' reaction, about my fears. He listened attentively, nodding occasionally. Show me where it is. I touched my neck. He came over and began to gently feel that area. His fingers were cool and confident. He touched it several times, from different sides, then stepped back. Caitlin, how long have you had this? About a month. Since February 22nd. Do your parents know? Mom says it's just a lymph node, that I'm being dramatic. Dr. Wilson took off his glasses, wiped them with a handkerchief, and put them back on. There was something in his face that worried me. Look, it could be a lymph node, but the size and consistency are a little worrisome. I want to refer you for an ultrasound and blood work, just to make sure everything is okay. My heart beat faster, so I wasn't imagining things. It means there's something to worry about. Is it serious? Probably not. 9 out of 10 such cases are benign, but it's better to check it out. You're a smart girl, right? It's always better to know for sure than to guess. I left the clinic with the referrals in my hand, feeling both relieved and scared. Someone had finally taken me seriously, but now I had to tell my parents that I had gone to the doctor without their permission, and that Dr. Wilson disagreed with my mom. Dinners at home became like a minefield. I didn't know how to tell them about my visit to the doctor, and the unspoken words weighed on us like a storm cloud. My mom talked about work, my dad about some complicated breakdown at the car service, and I kept quiet and pushed my food around on my plate. "You've been strange lately," my mom said the day before yesterday, when I refused to eat dinner again, "and you've lost some weight. Maybe you've caught a cold?" "Maybe," I answered, not looking up from my plate. "Take some vitamins. And get more sleep. Youth does not last forever. You have to take care of your health." The irony of the situation was painful. My mom was worried about my health in small ways, but ignored what could really be a problem. And this morning, I woke up with a headache and a feeling that the world was a little unreal. Everything seemed somehow blurry, out of contrast. My mom left for work at 7 in the morning, my dad left too, and I decided to go to the literature and life bookstore to buy a textbook on organic chemistry for my term paper. I thought that fresh air and a walk would help. Now I was lying on the floor between the shelves of romantic literature, and strange faces were circling around me. Someone covered me with his jacket. Someone held my hand. A woman in a red sweater kept telling me that the ambulance was on its way. "What's your name, dear?" she asked. "Caitlin," I whispered. "Caitlin Murphy. Should we call your parents?" I nodded and dictated my mom's number at work. It seemed strange to call the very person who had spent a month telling me I was making it up. But what choice did I have? A few minutes later, I heard ambulance sirens. The hospital smelled of disinfection and something else. Fear, maybe. I was lying on a narrow bed in the emergency room, connected to an intravenous drip, looking at the ceiling with yellow water stains. My mom was sitting in the corner on a plastic chair, nervously fumbling with the strap of her purse. Dad stood by the window, hands in his pockets, looking out at the parking lot. "Pressure's stabilized," the nurse on duty said, checking the monitor. My mom nodded, but her face was unusually worried. She kept giving me quick glances as if she was trying to figure out if I had anything else to say to her. But I remained silent. "Caitlin," she finally said, "could you tell me how you felt before you fainted?" "Dizzy. Just like I've been feeling for days. Why didn't you tell me?" I turned my head and looked at her. "Really? Is she really asking why I didn't tell her?" "I did. You said I was making it up." Mom turned away and her cheeks turned slightly red. Dad did not turn away from the window. Dr. Patel came in half an hour later, a short man with graying temples and tired eyes. He looked at the results of the blood tests taken in the ambulance, then at me. "Caitlin, can you tell me about any symptoms that have been bothering you lately?" I told him again about the tumor on my neck, about my fatigue, about my headaches. The doctor listened attentively and took notes. "Please show me where this tumor is." I touched my neck. The doctor came over and began to gently feel the area. His eyebrows drew together. "How long have you had it?" "A month and a half." "And have you seen a doctor?" "I saw a doctor, Wilson, a week ago. He sent me for an examination." Dr. Patel looked at my mother. "Why didn't you have it checked out?" Mom blushed again. I thought it wasn't that serious. I am a nurse, and I thought..." "Where's the referral?" There was a long pause. Mom looked at the floor. "I threw them away." "Threw them away?" Dr. Patel raised an eyebrow. "That it was just a normal lymph node." I looked at my mom, and my breath caught in my throat. She didn't just ignore my complaints. She actively obstructed my treatment. "Mom," I said quietly, "you burned them, didn't you?" My mother looked at me sharply. "What?" "I saw the ashes in the fireplace in the morning after I told you about the doctor's visit, and the smell of burning paper. You burned my referrals." Dad finally turned from the window. His face was pale. "Janice, I thought I was doing the right thing." My mom stood up from her chair. "I didn't want her to panic over nothing. I was trying to protect her." "Protect her, Nesia?" My voice was louder than I had intended. "You destroyed the medical records to protect me." "Caitlin, calm down." "No." I sat up on the bed despite the drip. For a month, I've been telling you that something was wrong. For a month, you brushed me off, called me a hypochondriac, said I was looking for attention. And when the doctor finally listened to me, you destroyed his referral. Dr. Patel stood quietly by the door, watching our family drama. Finally, he cleared his throat. I need to refer you for an urgent MRI. Given your symptoms and what I'm feeling on examination, it's urgent. An MRI? Dad spoke for the first time in the last hour. Yes, and I would recommend that we do it today. But it's just a lymph node. Mrs. Murphy? Dr. Patel turned to her. With all due respect to your medical expertise, this doesn't look like a normal lymph node. The size, the consistency, the accompanying symptoms, all of this requires a detailed examination. The next 2 hours dragged on like several days. MRI, tests, waiting. My mom kept trying to start a conversation, but I didn't answer. Dad was walking the hospital corridors, buying coffee from the vending machine, checking his phone. When Dr. Patel returned with the results, his face was serious. He asked us to go to a small office, sat down at the table and opened the folders. Caitlin. The results show a mass in your neck that is pressing on large blood vessels and nerves. It is much larger than one would expect from a lymph node. My heart sank. A neoplasm is a tumor, a real tumor. Is it cancer? I whispered. We can't say for sure yet. We need a biopsy, but what I see on the scans worries me, especially considering how long it's been growing without treatment. Mom made a sound, something between a scream and a sob. Dad sat down on a chair next to me, his hand touching mine. If it had been detected earlier, the doctor began. How much earlier? I interrupted. A month ago? When I first went to the doctor? Yes, a month can mean the difference between the second and the third stage. Sometimes between life and... He didn't finish his sentence, but everyone understood. Mom started to cry, not quietly, but loudly, hysterically. I didn't know. I thought, oh my God, I thought I was protecting her. Protecting her? I turned to her. You burned the documents that could have saved my life to protect me? Caitlin? No. Don't you dare say my name. You're not a mom. Moms don't do things like that. You were trying to ease your own conscience. I was screaming now, ignoring the fact that we were in a hospital. It was easier for you to believe that I was making it up than to consider the possibility that you might have been wrong. Dad was silent, looking at his hands. And you? I turned to him. Did you know that Mom burned the referral? A pause, then a quiet. Yes. And you didn't say anything? I didn't want any conflicts. I thought maybe she was right. Conflict? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Dad, you let Mom destroy the medical records so there would be no conflict? Caitlin, Get me out of here, I told Dr. Patel. I don't want to be in the same room with them. I understand how you feel, but you need the support of your family. This is not family. Family doesn't do things like this. An hour later, Aunt Lillian arrived at the hospital. I called her when my parents went out for a smoke. Lillian was my dad's sister, 5 years younger than him, and she was a high school teacher. We'd always gotten along, although we didn't see each other very often. She lived in the next town over. Oh my God, Caitlin, she hugged me, and for the first time that day, I cried for real. Why didn't you call me earlier? I thought my parents knew better. Lillian looked at me with her gray eyes, the same as Dad's, but warmer. From the very beginning, I did. About the tumor, about my parents' reaction, about the burned documents. Lillian listened, sometimes shaking her head, sometimes pursing her lips. Where are they now? Talking to the doctor. Mom is crying and says she didn't know. Dad doesn't say anything. How do you feel? Scared? And angry? Very angry. Lillian nodded. You have a right to be angry. What they did, It was unacceptable. When her parents returned, Lillian stood and turned to them, her voice calm but cold. "Janice." "Lillian," Mom wiped her eyes with a handkerchief. "It's good that you came. Caitlin needs support." "Yes, she does." "The question is from whom?" "What do you mean?" "I mean that you haven't been supportive of your daughter for the past month. On the contrary." Dad lowered his head. "Lillian, we did what we thought was best. Roger, you're my brother, and I love you. But what you did was a betrayal of a child's trust. Caitlin trusted you, and you put your own peace of mind before her health." "We didn't know." "Janice," Lillian turned to her mother, "you're a nurse. You know what it means to destroy medical records. It's not just carelessness. It's a conscious choice." Mom started crying again. "I was afraid. I was afraid it could be something serious. It was easier for me to believe that she was making it up. And because of your fear, your daughter could have died." The words hung in the air, harsh and irrefutable. Dad looked up, his eyes red. "What do we do now?" "You will do what the doctor says," Lillian said, "and you will stop making decisions for Caitlin. She's an adult, and after what happened, she has the right to decide for herself who will support her." I looked at my aunt with gratitude. "I want Lillian to be my proxy," I told Dr. Patel when he returned. "She will make decisions if I can't." Mom sobbed again but didn't object. Dad nodded. "I see," the doctor said. "We need to do the biopsy and start treatment as soon as possible." In the evening, when all the formalities were settled, Lillian sat down by my bedside. "How do you really feel?" "I don't know. Everything is mixed up. Fear, anger, relief that someone is finally listening to me. That's normal. You have a right to all these feelings. Lillian, what if it's cancer? What if it's too late because of them? Because of what happened?" My aunt took my hand in hers. "Then we'll fight. Together. But we shouldn't make ourselves into a worst-case scenario until we know the results of the biopsy. And if your parents want to—" Caitlin interrupted me. "You're not a little girl who depends on their decisions anymore. What happened showed you that sometimes adults are wrong, very seriously wrong. Your task now is to get better. The rest is secondary." Late at night, when everyone went home and I stayed in the hospital for observation, I lay there and looked at the dark ceiling. I felt as if I had aged several years in one day. My childhood ended the moment I realized that parents can not only be wrong, but also deliberately harm you, trying to appease their own conscience. But there was another side to it. For the first time in my life, I stood up for myself. For the first time, I told my parents what I thought without fear of disappointing them. And there was a person who supported me. The biopsy results came back in 3 days, which seemed like 3 years. Dr. Patel was sitting across from me in the same office where we had been earlier, holding a folder in his hands and trying to find the words. "Caitlin, it's follicular lymphoma," he finally said. "It's a type of cancer of the lymphatic system. The good news is that it's relatively slow growing. The bad news is that it has already spread to several lymph nodes." The word cancer sounded like a thunderclap in the room. Mom sobbed and grabbed a handkerchief. Dad sat motionless, looking at his hands. Lillian squeezed my hand. "What stage?" I asked. My voice sounded strangely calm. "Stage 2, with a transition to stage 3. If we had discovered this a month ago—" He didn't finish, but I understood. A month ago, it would have been the second stage, a month during which my mother burned my referrals and convinced me that I was making it up. "What's next?" Lillian asked. "Surgery to remove the accessible nodes, then chemotherapy. The prognosis is quite good if we start treatment immediately." Mom finally spoke up. "Doctor, how long will it take?" "How long will the treatment take?" "About 6 months of active therapy, perhaps more, depending on how the body reacts. 6 months. Half a year of my life, which could have been saved if my parents had listened to me from the very beginning. I want to start as soon as possible," I said. The surgery was scheduled for the following week. I was allowed to go home by then, but I asked Lillian to take me to her place. The idea of spending a week in the same house where my mother had burned my medical records seemed unbearable. "Caitlin, you know we want to be there for you." My mother stood in the hospital hallway, twisting her purse strap in her hands. "You are my biological parents," I replied. "But real parents don't do what you did. We can fix this." "No, you can't. You can't bring back that month. You can't change the fact that the cancer has spread." Dad came closer. "Daughter, I understand that you are angry." "Don't call me daughter," I turned to him. "Daughters trust their fathers. And I will never trust you again." It was cruel, but it was the truth. Something inside me broke forever that day in the hospital when I learned about the burned documents. Lillian's house was small but cozy. She lived alone after her divorce 3 years ago, had 2 guest rooms, one of which she used as a home office. I settled in the second, a bright room with large windows and shelves lined with books. "Make yourself at home," Lillian said as she helped me unpack. "And don't worry about your parents. They call a few times a day, but I told them I'd only leave messages when you wanted me to. Thank you for everything. You're welcome. You're my niece, the only family I have left after what happened to your parents." In the evening, we sat in the kitchen, drinking tea and talking. Lillian was talking about her work at school, about the students who reminded her of me at that age. I caught myself thinking that this is how it should be at home, calm, without constant tension. "Lillian," I said suddenly, "did you always know that something was wrong with Mom and Dad?" She was silent for a minute, twirling the cup in her hands. "I suspected your mom has always been controlling, and Roger always avoided conflict even when it came to standing up for the truth. Why didn't you ever tell me? Because you seemed happy, and I thought it wasn't my place to interfere in family relationships. And now? Now I realize that sometimes you have to interfere." The surgery went well. The surgeon, doctor. Connor was able to remove all the available nodes. I woke up in the intensive care unit with a sore throat and a big Band-Aid on my neck, but alive. "How do you feel?" Lillian was sitting next to me when I opened my eyes. "Like I was run over by a truck," I wheezed. "The doctor says the operation was successful. Where are my parents?" "They came in the morning, but you were still sleeping. I told them I'd tell them they were worried." "Thank you." Over the next few days in the hospital, I got to know the other patients in the oncology ward. There was Esther, a woman in her 50s with breast cancer who told jokes even during chemotherapy. Johnny, a guy my age with leukemia who played guitar in the common room. And Marcus. Marcus Stone was 25 years old, tall and thin, with a short haircut and a scar on his chin. Bone cancer, stage 3. He was a former soldier who had served in Afghanistan and returned home 3 years ago with a medal for bravery and a diagnosis that changed his life. "You're new," he said when I first walked into the common room. He was sitting in a chair by the window, reading a book. "Caitlin, Marcus. Welcome to the club no one wants to be a member of." His black humor was similar to my mood. We started talking, and it turned out that we had a lot in common. Both of us felt betrayed. He by the system that sent him to war and then left him alone with his illness, and I by my parents, whom I had trusted all my life. "The worst thing," he said a few days later as we sat in the hospital garden, "is not the pain or the fear of dying. The worst thing is realizing that the people you trusted were not who they said they were." "I understand," I said. "I feel the same way." "My parents?" They ignored my complaints for a month and then burned the medical records so they wouldn't have to admit they were wrong. Marcus whistled. "It's cruel. Even my parents, who think that cancer is a punishment for sins, wouldn't go that far." "Your parents really think that?" "Religious fanatics. They believe that if I prayed more and sinned less, God would not punish me. That's why I don't see them." "Isn't it lonely?" "Sometimes. But it's better to be lonely than to constantly make excuses for being sick." His words struck me. I also began to feel something similar. It's better to be without parents than with parents who pretend to care, but actually think only about themselves. My mom came every day. She brought flowers, fruit, magazines. She would sit next to the bed and tell me the news from the hospital where she worked, pretending that everything was as it was before. But I saw the falsity in her every gesture. "Caitlin, I brought you that shampoo you like," she said one day, taking a bottle out of her bag. "Mom, in 2 weeks I'm going to start chemotherapy. My hair will start falling out. Don't say such things. Maybe it will be different for you." "No, it won't. It's a side effect of the medicine," the doctor explained. "But the shampoo is good." I looked at her and suddenly realized she did not accept the reality of my diagnosis. For her, it was still some kind of temporary problem that would resolve itself if we pretended it didn't exist. "Mom, do you realize that I have cancer?" "Of course I do." "No, you don't. You're doing the same thing again, ignoring the problem, hoping it will go away." "I'm not ignoring it. I bring you gifts. I come here every day." "You come here to appease your own conscience, not for me." Mom cried again. "How can you say that? I'm your mom." A real mom wouldn't have burned the medical records. A real mom would have listened to me from the beginning. I was thinking. You were thinking about yourself. You were thinking about how much easier it would be for you to live if the problem disappeared by itself. Dad stood in the doorway, silent as always. Sometimes he came to the bed, touched my hand, asked how I was doing, but there was a gap between us that could not be bridged by simple gestures. "Dad," I said once, when my mother went to talk to the doctor, "why are you silent? What can we talk about?" He sat in a chair looking at his hands. "About what happened. I thought she knew better. Even when you saw the ashes in the fireplace." He raised his head, looked at me. "I didn't want any conflicts. And now you don't want to either? It's too late to change anything. Too late to apologize?" There was a long pause. Then, "Caitlin, I don't know how to apologize for something that could cost you your life." It was the most sincere thing he had said in a long time, but even sincerity could not bring back that month. Chemotherapy started a week after the surgery. Dr. Ramirez, the oncologist, explained the whole process. 6 courses of 3 weeks each, side effects, chances of recovery. "You will be tired, you may experience hair loss, nausea, and a decrease in immunity," she listed. "But your body is young, and we have a good chance of achieving remission." I spent the first day of chemotherapy in the chair next to Marcus. He was already on his 4th course and looked tired, but not broken. "How does it feel?" I asked when the nurse connected the drip. "Like poison that is supposed to save your life," he smiled, "but you get used to it." "Is it scary?" "At first, yes. Then you realize that you have no choice. It's either this or—" He didn't finish, but I understood. "Marcus, do you have someone? A girlfriend, a wife?" I did. Jessica. But when she found out about the diagnosis, she said she wasn't ready for that kind of test. "I'm sorry." "Don't be. It's better to find out the truth about a person now than to live under illusions." His words struck me again. It seems that the disease had one unexpected property. It showed people as they really are, without masks, without politeness, without responsibilities. 2 weeks later, my hair started falling out. First a few strands, then more and more. One morning I woke up and my pillow was covered with my hair. "Do you want to go buy a wig?" Lillian suggested. "I want a headscarf or a bandana. I don't want to pretend I'm okay. I understand." My mom cried again when she saw me bald. "My little girl." "I'm not a little girl," I said sharply. "It doesn't help." "But you've changed so much." "Yes, I have. And it's good. Little girls trust adults. I don't anymore." She wiped her eyes and tried to smile. "Should I buy you a nice handkerchief? Or a hat?" "Mom." I looked her in the eyes. "Stop trying to fix what can't be fixed. I don't want your gifts. I don't want your fake care. I want you to understand that you did what you did, and we both have to live with it. But I'm your mom." "No, "You're the woman who gave birth to me. It's not the same thing. She left earlier than usual that day, and I felt not guilty, but relieved. For the first time in my life, I told my mom what I was thinking without fear of upsetting her." "Good for you," Marcus summed up when I told him about the conversation. "Fake care is worse than honest indifference." "How did you learn to be so direct?" "Cancer teaches you. When you realize that you may not have much time left, you stop wasting it on nonsense, including fake relationships." I looked at him and thought I wanted to be as strong as him, not to play the role of a good girl who always apologizes and tries to please everyone, but to be myself, even if someone doesn't like it. By the end of the third course of chemotherapy, I finally stopped accepting visits from my parents. I asked Lillian to tell them that I wanted to concentrate on my treatment and that their presence distracted me. "Are you sure?" she asked. "Yes. For the first time in a long time, I am absolutely sure." And it was true. Without my parents' constant attempts to fix the situation, I could finally focus on the main thing: getting better. Remission. Dr. Ramirez said the word with a smile I hadn't seen much of in months. The latest scan showed that the tumor is gone, blood tests are normal, and the lymph nodes are not swollen. "You did great, Caitlin," she said, closing the folder with the results. "Your body responded well to the treatment." I sat in her office and felt a strange emptiness instead of joy. 6 months of struggle were over, but what was next? I did not want to return to my old life. That girl who sought her parents' approval and was afraid to disappoint them died along with the cancer cells. "What now?" I asked. "Regular checkups every 3 months, a healthy lifestyle. And live, Caitlin. Just live." Marcus finished his treatment a week before I did. His prognosis was worse, but he too was in remission. We were sitting in a cafe near the hospital celebrating our graduation from the oncology department. "Any plans?" he asked, stirring his coffee. Moving. I want to finish my studies, but not here. Not in a city where there are reminders of what happened on every corner. "I understand. And your parents?" "I don't know. Maybe someday I'll be able to talk to them, but not now. I'm planning to go to California. There is a rehabilitation program for veterans there. I want to try to become a counselor for people like me. To help others?" "Uh-huh. It turns out that when you go through hell, you can become a guide for those who are still in it." His words stuck in my head. Maybe my hell can become something useful for others? Lillian helped me find a university in Portland, Oregon. It had a good social work program, and it was far enough away from home to make a fresh start. "Are you sure you want to move that far?" she asked as she helped me pack. Yes, I need the distance. From everything. "Will you be able to make it financially?" "I can help." "I know, and thank you. But I want to try it on my own. I have some savings, and I can work part-time." Lillian nodded. Over the months, she had learned not to impose, but to be there for her. Do my parents know? Lillian will tell them when I get there. I met them one last time before I left, not because I wanted to, but because I realized that I had to put an end to it. We were sitting in the same Mabel Cafe where I used to work. Mom had lost weight, looked older. Dad hadn't changed much except for more gray hair. "You look good," Mom said when the waitress brought us coffee. "Thanks. Your hair has grown back. It's even more beautiful." I touched up the short haircut. My hair did grow back, but I decided to keep it short. It reminded me of what I'd been through. "Caitlin," Dad spoke first. "We know you're moving." "Yes." "Is it because of us?" I looked at him, then at my mom. "Part of it, but not only. I want to start a new life. And can we be a part of it?" Mom spoke quietly, twirling a napkin in her hands. "I don't know. Maybe someday, but not right now." "Caitlin, we know we made a mistake." "Mom," I interrupted, "it wasn't a mistake. A mistake is when you forget to buy milk, and you deliberately destroyed medical records and ignored my complaints for a month. That's a choice." She cried quietly, trying to hide it. We can fix this. No, you can't. You can't get that month back. You can't change the fact that I went through chemotherapy at a later stage. You can't bring back trust. Dad put down his cup. What do we do? Live with our decisions. So do I. Can we at least make phone calls? I thought about it for a minute. Because of Lillian. If I want to talk to you, I'll put it through her. They nodded. What else could they do? As we were leaving the cafe, my mom suddenly hugged me. I love you, she whispered. No matter what you think of me, I really do love you. I know, I replied, not hugging her back, but love is not enough to justify what you did. Portland greeted me with rain and fog. I rented a small apartment near the university, got a part-time job in a bookstore, and started a new life. It was hard at first. I was used to being surrounded by people. First my parents, then Lillian, doctors, other patients. Now I was alone, and the silence of my apartment sometimes seemed deafening. University turned out to be more difficult than college. The professors were more demanding. The workload was heavier. But I liked the social work program. For the first time, I was studying something that made sense after everything that had happened. My classmates were different. Most were ordinary students who came here after school and did not yet know what they wanted from life. But there were others, those who came here after their own traumas, who wanted to help people because they had gone through painful experiences themselves. You look older than your age, Jaina, a girl from a parallel group, told me when we were having coffee after a lecture on the psychology of trauma. People often say that. I felt that way too after some events, as if the experience changes something in your face. I didn't ask which events. In social work, you quickly learn not to ask questions until a person is ready to talk. But gradually, I started to make friends. Real friends, not those who talked to me because they had to. Jaina, who survived domestic violence and now wanted to work with women in crisis. Carlos, who grew up in a poor neighborhood and dreamed of helping children from disadvantaged families. We understood each other without words, but the hardest part was trust. After what my parents had done, I instinctively expected betrayal from everyone. When someone said they were worried about me, I was looking for a catch. When someone offered to help, I thought it was for their own benefit. You are very wary, Alex said after we met several times in lectures. Alex Curtis was a graduate student in the clinical psychology program. 26 years old, thin, with kind brown eyes and a habit of looking away when he was nervous. He worked as an intern at the Student Counseling Center and often came to our lectures. I have my reasons, I replied. I just noticed. I liked the fact that he didn't try to get details out of me. He didn't play the role of a savior who had to help me open up. He just stated the fact and left me to make a choice. We started meeting for coffee after lectures. We talked about studies, books, and movies. Alex told me that he had come to psychology after his own therapy. He was depressed after his younger brother died in a car accident. I felt guilty that I was alive, he said one day when we were sitting in a park near the university, and that I can use this experience to help others. Aren't you afraid that it will take too much strength? Listening to other people's pain all the time? I am afraid, but I'm more afraid of living aimlessly. His words resonated with something inside me. I didn't want to live aimlessly either. I wanted my experience to have meaning. We started meeting more often. Alex was different. He didn't try to fix or save me. When I told him about the cancer, he just nodded and said, "That must have been very hard." It was. Do you want to talk about it? Not today. Okay, and that was it. No dramatic exclamations, no attempts to understand how I felt, just an acknowledgement that it had happened and a willingness to wait until I wanted to share. When I finally told him about my parents, he was silent for a long time. I understand why it's hard for you to trust, he finally said. Sometimes I think I'll never be able to trust anyone completely. Maybe you will, or maybe not. Trust is not a switch that either works or doesn't. It's more like a muscle that can be trained. Are you speaking as a psychologist? No. As a person who also learns to trust after an injury. We took our time with the relationship. Alex understood that I needed time, and I appreciated his patience. We just spent time together, going to the movies, cooking dinner, talking until late at night. 6 months after moving, I decided to go to a psychotherapist, not because anyone forced me to, but because I realized that I needed help sorting out everything that had happened. Dr. Morgan was a woman in her 50s with gray hair and a calm voice. At the first session, she just listened to me tell my story. "How do you feel about your parents now?" she asked. Anger, disappointment, sometimes even hatred. And guilt? Sometimes. I think maybe I was really too demanding. Maybe my mom just wanted to protect me. And what do you think about this rationally? Rationally, I understand that they put their own comfort above my health, but emotionally, it's hard to accept. Yes, part of me still wants to believe that they are good parents who just made a mistake. Therapy was painful, but helpful. Dr. Morgan helped me to distinguish where my emotions end and the real facts begin. Your parents are imperfect people with their own fears and traumas, she said in one session. That doesn't justify their actions, but it explains them. How do you live with this knowledge? In different ways. Some people forgive. Someone sets boundaries. Someone stops communicating. There is no right answer for everyone. And for me? For you, the answer is the one you can live with without destroying yourself. After a year in Portland, I felt that I was finally starting to breathe freely. My studies were going well. My relationship with Alex was deepening, and my friends were a real support. But most importantly, I started to like myself. Not the submissive girl who was afraid to disappoint her parents. "You've changed since we met," Alex said one night when we were cooking dinner in my apartment. "In what way?" "You've become more present. Before, it seemed like a part of you was always somewhere else." Maybe it was. I lived in the past for a long time. And now I try to live in the present. Lillian called every week. She would tell me the news, ask about my studies, and send greetings from her parents. "They often ask about you," she said during one of the calls. "And what do you tell them?" "That you are fine, that you're studying, that I'm happy." "And is that true? Happy?" "Yes." Lillian was silent. "I guess so. Different kind of happy than before. More real." She was right. I was happier than when I was trying to live up to other people's expectations. "And what about them?" I asked. "Mom goes to a psychologist. Dad, well, you know Dad. He's more silent than usual." "Do they realize what they've done?" "I think Mom is starting to understand. Dad is more difficult." I nodded, even though Lillian couldn't see me. Maybe someday we'll be able to talk. Maybe not. But for the first time in a long time, it didn't seem like the most important problem in the world. I had a life of my own, and it was good. It's been 3 years since I moved to Portland. 3 years during which I graduated from university, got my social work degree, and started working at a family support center. 3 years during which I learned to live with a scar on my neck that reminded me not of weakness, but of being a survivor. Today was my 22nd birthday, the first birthday I celebrated without thinking about whether I would live to see the next one. Regular checkups showed that the cancer was not returning, and Dr. Ramirez finally said I could relax. "Happy birthday." Alex kissed me as he handed me a cup of coffee. We'd been living together for a year now in a small apartment overlooking the river. "Dinner at that Italian restaurant you like." My job was hard, but I couldn't imagine myself doing anything else. The teenagers who came to our center often reminded me of myself 3 years ago, confused, betrayed by the adults they trusted. Today, I had a session with Mia, a 16-year-old girl whose parents were going through a toxic divorce that was using her as a weapon against each other. "My mom says my dad wants to take me away so he doesn't have to pay child support," Mia said. "And my dad says my mom is turning me against him." "What do you think?" "I think they're both using me for their own purposes, and that I'm tired of being a bargaining chip. And what do you want to do with this knowledge?" "I don't know. They're my parents. I have to love them, right?" I heard this question a lot. You have to love them. I have to forgive. As if love is a duty, not a feeling. Mia, who says you owe anyone anything? Well, it's customary. Family is the most important thing. And if your family hurts you, then I don't know. Love isn't a duty, Mia. It's a choice. And you have the right to protect yourself, even from your family. In the evening, Alex took me to that Italian restaurant like he promised. During dessert, he said, "Caitlin, I've been offered a job in San Francisco at a university clinic. I want you to come with me." My heart was beating faster. "And you want to accept the offer?" "I want us to accept it together." "Alex, are you asking me to give up everything and move again?" "No, not give up. I'm asking you to start a new life, together. And if I don't want to, then I'm not going." "And then you're going to blame me for missing a good opportunity?" "Caitlin, I never blamed you for anything. It was the truth. Alex has always supported my decisions. I'm sorry, it's a reflex. When someone suggests a change, I immediately think of a catch. I'm doing this for us because I want to build a future with you." I looked at our intertwined fingers and suddenly realized that I wanted to do the same. "I need time to think about it." "Of course. Take as much time as you need." On the way home, I touched the scar on my neck, a habit that had remained since my illness. Before, this scar reminded me of fear. Now it reminded me of strength. At home, a message from Marcus was waiting for me. "Hi, Caitlin! I'm getting married next month." I met Samantha at a support group. She is also a cancer survivor and understands all my dark corners. I wanted to share my joy with someone who understands how long it took me to get there. I smiled. Marcus deserved to be happy. "Congratulations. I am very happy for you. You deserve all the joy in the world." I suddenly realized that this is what I wanted, a life in which there is room for happiness despite everything that happened. The next day I said to Alex, "I'm going with you." "Really?" "Yes, I am, but with conditions. We don't live together for the first 6 months. I want to get settled in a new place first." "Okay." "And if something goes wrong, we'll talk about it honestly." "I agree." That night, I called Lillian to tell her about my plans. San Francisco? That's a long way from home. "Aunt, Portland isn't very close. And your parents? They were hoping you'd come back someday." "Maybe I will, but not right now. I need to find myself first. I understand, and I support you, whatever you decide." A month later, Alex and I moved to San Francisco. Working at the Social Services Center was more challenging than in Portland, but I loved it. One day, I was referred a case that made my heart clench. 17-year-old Ashley was diagnosed with a thyroid tumor, and her parents refused to treat her, believing that God will take care of it. "They say that if I really believe, I will get better without doctors," Ashley said, "and that God gave people brains to invent medicine." Over the next few weeks, I worked with Ashley and her family. Eventually, her parents agreed to the treatment, but their relationship with their daughter deteriorated. "They resent me," Ashley said after her first round of chemotherapy. "They say I chose drugs over faith in God. And how does that make you feel?" "Upset." Her words stuck in my head, sad but alive. This accurately described how I felt about my parents. A year passed in San Francisco. One evening, Lillian called me. "Caitlin, I need to tell you something. It's about your mom. She's been diagnosed with breast cancer. The world stopped." "What stage?" "Second. The prognosis is good, but she needs treatment. Does she want to talk to me?" "She does, but she's afraid to call. Give me her number. I'll call her." I dialed my mom's number, my heart pounding. Hello. My mom's voice sounded weaker than I remembered. "Mom, it's me, Caitlin." There was a pause, then a soft sob. "Daughter," Lillian told me. "How are you feeling?" "Scared. Very scared." The irony of the situation did not escape me. Now my mother was in my place. "Has the treatment started yet?" Next week. Caitlin, I'd like to see you. I don't know if I'm ready, I understand, but if something goes wrong. Mom, nothing's gonna go wrong. It's stage 2, it's treatable. You're lucky you caught it early. Unlike you? The words hung in the air. She finally said it. Yes, unlike me. Caitlin, Mom, this is not the time to have this conversation. You need to focus on getting better. When you're better, maybe we can talk. Do you really think so? I don't know, but maybe. After the conversation, I cried. Not out of pity for my mom, but out of relief. I was able to talk to her and not break down. My mom recovered. The treatment was successful, and 6 months later, she was in remission. We corresponded, sometimes talked on the phone, not often, but regularly. We did not have a full-fledged relationship. My mother was never able to fully recognize the extent of her guilt. Dad remained silent and silent. But something changed. We learned to exist in the same world without destroying each other. I realized that they were imperfect people with their own fears and traumas. This did not justify their actions, but it explained them. And that was enough to move on without constant anger. Today, on my 25th birthday, I'm sitting in a cafe by the ocean. Alex has gone to buy a cake and will be back soon. In my 3 years here, I have realized the main thing. Family does not always mean unconditional love. Sometimes it's just people with whom you are connected by blood, but who can hurt you. And it is normal to protect yourself even from your closest ones. I learned to value myself not through the approval of others, but through my own achievements. I learned to love not because I have to, but because I want to. I learned to trust gradually, cautiously, but sincerely. The scar on my neck reminds me not of weakness, but of strength, that I survived. That wisdom can be born out of pain and a desire to help others out of trauma. Have I forgiven my parents? Partially. Not because they deserve it, but because my anger was destroying me. Do I trust people? Yes, but only reasonably. Do I believe in true love? Yes, because I live it every day with Alex. Do I regret what happened? Sometimes, but mostly not. Because without that trauma, I would not have become who I am today. I would not have found my calling. I would not have learned to be strong. Life goes on. Pain can turn into wisdom. And from wisdom comes the desire to make the world a better place for those who are going through the same thing. Maybe this is the meaning of everything. Not to avoid pain, but to turn it into something useful for others. I touched the scar on my neck and smiled. Tomorrow at work, I have a new case to deal with. A teenage girl whose parents refuse to recognize her depression. I know what to say to her. I know how to help. After all, pain that doesn't kill really makes you stronger, if you let it.